Good to see you, man. You all right, brother?
Yeah, I'm very good.
Yeah? How are things in
Yeah,
Cayman?
it's good. I mean, we've got no COVID here, so we can move around the islands, all that stuff. I'm still in Little Cayman. I'm doing some work in my house in Grand Cayman, so I can't go there
Right.
right now. It's unlivable. But other than that, it's all good.
So, not a single case on the island.
No,
How do you decide whether to let people on?
we don't.
You just don't.
Well, you can if you've got a work permit or family, or they've got this new 1 year work permit that if you wanted to go and work from Cayman, you can. You have to quarantine for 2 weeks, wear a tracking device. So there's not a lot of tourists, put it that way.
I quite fancy that a year in
Yeah,
Cayman.
yeah. Why not?
Well, they're about to lock us down again here. I think they've denied it, but the rest of Europe's doing it. So
I know it's coming.
anyway, man, listen. I your epic thread on central bank digital currencies, which I haven't spent too much time looking at yet, but I have now, obviously, in preparation for this, and I'm a little bit scared by them, but
Yeah,
also,
so we should be.
yeah, I
Also
should be.
excited.
Well, I'm more excited for what it means for Bitcoin, because it's just obviously it's a vote for Bitcoin. Um, but we should go through it because there were some things like I didn't understand or I wouldn't understand. There's some things other people wouldn't understand. But the background for this was you put it early on in the thread, was the IMF. I read the article relating to a new Bretton Woods moment. What was your take on that? Because I don't believe they're going to be moving to a fiscally responsible policies that they had under the original Bretton Woods agreement.
No, what it's to do with, and this has come from various sources, from the BIS, from the Bank of England, all sorts of people. What they want to move away is from the dollar standard, because everybody's heard this, that the dollar is too strong. The dollar, the $13 trillion of debts, the system's unsustainable. What is that all about? It's really simple. The US accounts for 25% of the global economy, but it's about 79% of all transactions. So there simply aren't enough dollars. So in a system like that, because it's the world's reserve currency, everybody's beholden to it. So that means the US owns the SWIFT payment system, which is the way we transfer money around the world. And if you don't delight the Americans, they can just turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
Iran, Russia, others have had that treatment. So people don't like that because it's a power that they have over others. And that was impossible to solve for until central bank digital currencies came along. And so they're also looking at, imagine that you're South African or Brazilian, right? Your whole economy goes up and down with the dollar, which is not in your hands. Yes, you may not run responsible fiscal and monetary policy, but you've got this added thing of the dollar is everything. So if the dollar goes up, you're screwed. If the dollar goes down, you do well. And really, it's because trade is all in dollars, in commodities. And what you need is probably maybe a commodity currency, which has a basket of currencies, something that dampens that volatility. So, and I think China and the Asian regional bloc would probably prefer their own currency because most of their trade is inter-country and inter-region. So there's a block, but it doesn't have to be pegged. Who knows how it works? Maybe it's just a basket with some sort of percentage weighting based on whatever, GDP or trade flows, or it could be anything really. So that's what it's all about at top level, is we need to move away from the dollar. Now, obviously, and if you read all of the white papers from all of these guys, they all mention Bitcoin because they saw it, they understood what it meant, and understood, okay, the world's changed. So we need to adapt, and this is a better way of doing things. Now, these are not cryptocurrencies. These are very different things. These are a digital version of their own currency issued directly from the central bank, so it doesn't have to go through the banking system.
Okay, there's quite a bit to unpack there. So, for somebody like me who doesn't understand this, you've talked here about Brazil, where, as an example, where if the dollar goes up in value, that's bad for their economy. Did you say it's bad or it's good?
If it goes up, it's bad.
Can you just explain to me why that is?
Yeah, because their commodities are priced in dollars denominated. So when the dollar goes up, the price of commodities goes down.
Okay.
They're inversely correlated. So then they get less Brazilian real for every bushel of wheat they sell, or whatever it may be. And it's that. The problem is they have dollar debts, a lot of these, and then they get dollars back in, but it goes up and down depending on what's happening to the commodity price. And that's all related to the dollar. So often you find, like, for example, as we're speaking, oil's down another 5% today. So oil's fallen very sharply, 20% in a few days. What it means is now people who produce oil have US dollar debts, and they're making less dollars from selling their oil.
I understand now.
So your cash flow's impaired. You know, I've been talking about the insolvency issues. These are some of the things that cause it. Because not only have you got a global slowdown, but the price has gone lower as well. So you're selling less at a lower price. That's really bad if you're a debtor.
Right. Okay. So you imagine a basket of currencies. A Libra came up a couple of times as an inspiration for some of this potentially. But even so, with a basket of currencies, does that still? Are we talking about dampening the risk, but the risk still exists? And how does that?
There's no change in the risk of debasement of currencies. Yeah. We're not changing the structure of fiat money. We're changing how we transfer it around. So it doesn't change any of the issues that we have with fiat currency. In fact, arguably, when you saw the IMF paper, what they said is, fine, if we all start thinking of a basket of global currency, why don't we all undertake fiscal stimulus at the same time and monetary stimulus? Because they realize it's a big mess out there right now, and it's only going to get worse. So they're kind of talking about, that's the agreement with Bretton Woods, that we all kind of debase our currency at the same time. That's the code word for what this is all about.
But why would they do that? Because if you were the central bank in a country that the currency was performing well, the country was performing well, the economy was doing well, if everyone else debased their currency, wouldn't you be incentivized not to? Wouldn't you be incentivized to avoid that stimulus? Because that actually...
No, everybody wants a weaker currency. When you've got low global demand, you want lower price for your own goods. So you've heard this expression about currency wars for a long time. And that's because one by one, they kind of all rotate in quantitative easing and monetary debasement. But this is, they say, well, why don't we just all do it together? Because therefore nobody has the beggar thy neighbor approach. So if the IMF agrees it with, let's say, the top 10 currency blocks in the world, they all say, fine, we're all going to expand our monetary base for fiscal stimulus purposes by 25%.
Okay.
Who loses? Nobody. Well, we all lose. But the reality is what they think is, well, nobody's getting a competitive advantage. Everyone's getting the advantage at the same time. I get it. It kind of does make sense. If you're a large debtor and you can issue more to try and pay for some of the issues, and yes, we do need fiscal stimulus, I understand. And, again, that always goes into the argument of, why this is so powerful for Bitcoin. Somebody's creating digital rails that you can buy and sell things instantaneously. You actually don't need stable coins really in this environment. And so you can move digital assets around the world supremely efficiently. And it gives you also the bull case for Bitcoin, because if what they're telling you is you want to do a Bretton Woods where we can all agree to stabilize our currencies and do massive printing, well, Christ, if you're after a better case for Bitcoin, I've never heard of one.
All right, well, we'll come to the Bitcoin bit. I still want to spend a bit of time just kind of understanding this. Okay, so every country would be able to enact a stimulus program at the same time. It avoids currency wars. That still doesn't affect us as potential, say, savers. It would still debase our currency as an individual.
Correct. But, it all depends on what you think of as inflation, right? Because if all currency blocks are devaluing their currency, debasing their currency at the same time, imports and exports don't go up and down in price. So you don't feel worse off. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Because only hard assets have really gone up in value then. So you'll find that everything from fine wine to art to gold will go up in value. Maybe real estate too.
But then, so
it depends whether it generates inflation and how people perceive that.
So if anything, therefore, it will create a bigger wealth divide, though, between those who have assets and those who don't.
Well, the idea is not to, right? The idea is they want to directly give money to people who don't have the assets, right? That's the part of the problem. The current system is really broken, is you cannot stimulate where it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
So you stimulate by printing money that goes into the banking system that does or does not get distributed. Then only the people with the best credit get the money. That's the credit cycle. That's how it always works. That's okay. But in a situation like this, which is an external event where small businesses have been destroyed, how do you help them? I mean, it's not their fault. It's not like they've got massive debts. They're not General Electric or AT&T with these hundreds of billions of debts. They're just normal businesses whose cash flow now doesn't meet the rent.
So is this just a big plan for potentially restructuring these debts across the world over the next kind of 5 to 10 years? Because I spoke with Lynn Alden, and she talked about the 130% debt to GDP event horizon. 51 of 52 countries have hit that point of had to devalue their currency. I think there's only Japan who hasn't. And I think I was reading in that IMF paper that, so we expect 2021 debt levels to go up significantly to around 125% of GDP in advanced economies. So we're heading towards that event horizon. Is this just a plan to essentially wipe these debts in a certain way?
Look, that's always been my thought is what, obviously they're thinking about the end game.
Yeah.
And the end game of debt is either pay it back, default on it, or inflate your way out.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only way.
Yeah.
And there's no way of paying it back. The central banks have tried to get off the quantitative easing system. They can't, because debt itself is so deflationary, plus the demographics, plus technology, plus globalization. It's almost impossible. So they've got to do something. Everybody hates central banks. I get it. Put yourself in the hands of a central banker. Given this, what do? You're 120% of GDP in debt. What are you going to do? Just not stimulate? Say I'm going to be fiscally responsible? You're not going to do it. So
yeah,
there have to be something, and some jubilee in whatever format that is as old as human literature is. Yeah. There's always been debt jubilees. When people overextend, overborrow, eventually there's no way out without wiping it out. And who pays the cost in that? That's the issue.
Well, this is, again, what Lynn was talking about, because she said a default is unlikely due to credit ratings. And she said the most likely way is to inflate their way out of it, and we'll see high inflation over the next 10 years. So the debtors will be nominally paid off, but their purchasing power will be maybe half what it was. She thinks that's the most likely outcome.
Yes, and that's, again, slightly tricky how to generate inflation. I mean, the central banks have not been able to. Not inflation in some... inflation is different to different people. Your inflation rate is different to mine. Currency debasement inflation is different to commodity inflation. What we don't have is demand-led wage growth inflation. And I'm going to write a big piece for this for Global Macro Investor in a couple of weekends' time. Wage deflation, I think, is actually what has been going on, not inflation of goods prices. Because if you look at the price of most goods in gold terms, they're roughly where they were, right?
Okay.
So why are we not benefiting? Why is it not stable for us? Why does everybody feel screwed? Well, if you look at real wages in the US, they haven't risen since 1974. Real wage growth has not gone up. So, but goods have gone up.
Yep.
And people think that's inflation. But if you look at all the goods, they all kind of match gold and everything else. So it feels that if you think it through, what is wage deflation? Why? And it's a very different way of looking at things. And I'm just starting to get my head around this after a conversation with Jeff Booth, is if you think about it, in the early 80s, a record number of people walked into the labor force, which is the baby boomers. Mm-hmm. Largest ever cohort in world history. So they all compete for a job. Guess what? Wages stop going up. Obviously, right? That's basic economics. Mm-hmm. Too much supply, not enough demand. So the next part of the equation is, so wages stop going up, but goods continue to go up in price over time. So what do people do? Borrow money to make up for it. Obvious. There goes the debt bubble. So now you've got the debt bubble and you've got wages that won't go up. Then the next thing, you hit 1996 and the World Trade Organization is formed and the treaty is ratified, then suddenly somebody making steel in Sheffield is now competing with somebody in China. Game over.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened there was the corporations got rich because their margins exploded and the average guy got poor. So you've made them have lower wages. You've got them to increase their debts, and now you've taken their jobs away, or lowered the cost again of wages because you're competing with China. And then layer on top of that technology. In 10 years' time, there'll be no taxi drivers, there'll be no bus drivers, there'll be no truck drivers, there'll be no train drivers. I mean, just simple things like that. And Mark Andreessen was dead right. Software is eating the world. Technology is proving to be a more productive way of running businesses than humans. Okay, that's just fact. It's not going away. It's been happening since the Industrial Revolution, right? And the Agricultural Revolution. It's all the same thing. It's just the relentless drive of technology, which is why procreation rates around the world have collapsed. I mean, because there's no point having children, because the opportunity is less. So actually population growth will adjust over time to this. We've seen it in Japan, So that then leads into the things like universal basic income. You've screwed all these people. They've got no way out. They're now heavily indebted. They're trying to retire. They don't have enough in their pensions. There's no jobs for them, and technology is keeping a lid on wages. You can't generate inflation from the 70s. That's just can't happen. It'll be a different type of inflation when it comes. So that's not there. How do you help these people? Right. So the idea was print money and the banks will give it away. I get that. It didn't work because only the people who didn't need the money got access to it. So Jeff Bezos can probably go out and borrow $100 billion on a phone call. Good luck, my friend, if you want to. That's the issue here. What you're doing is creating a system that incentivizes the rich. So the idea then is universal basic income, which is okay, fine. Let's just shift up the standard of living of everybody. And that's going to help. At least people can afford to have, if the structural situation means that companies can't pay them more wages and will lay them off over time because of technology, let's make sure that people have access to food, rent, clothing, healthcare.
What do you think of UBI yourself?
I actually like it.
Okay. It's controversial.
Because, yes, and I get it. People don't like it. Oh, you're paying people not to work, blah, 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 blah. Look, the facts are these people have been left behind, and it's no fault of their own. Okay, you can layer in the education system's failed them as well. But how do you help people in this situation? It's not going to get better. And this is why it's come out of Silicon Valley, because they're like, listen, guys, we're destroying the world here. You need to find an answer because it's not going away. And everyone's still so back in the 1970s because that was the big thing, that they saw inflation and that they're fighting the wrong war. And Silicon Valley's telling them that, and I think they're right. Now, I don't think it's like it should be thought of as a socialist thing versus a capitalist thing. It's basically a humanist thing at this point.
I mean,
the rise of
it's a welfare program.
It is a welfare program, but all of Europe survived with welfare programs fine.
Yeah.
The quality of life in Europe's extremely high.
It's a very tough concept to discuss in Bitcoin circles because it's socialism. Yeah. And if you believe in socialism, and it's one step from communism.
Well, see, Bitcoin is what's attractive about Bitcoin, really, at its core, is it offers the little guy an opportunity, right? Which most other things don't. So it's a complete inversion, and that's great. But still, not enough people will benefit. There'll be a group who will, because it's not owned by enough.
Yeah,
early on.
I haven't actually looked at, because there's been a couple of studies, a couple of like test programs with UBI, and I haven't actually seen what the success rate is. In some ways, we're operating the furlough scheme is almost like a micro test of UBI.
Yeah, and so people say it's going to be inflationary. So think how it works, right? Inflation is a rate of change. So you're going to have 1 year where all the inflation numbers are going to go up because there's a new increased demand for goods. People who couldn't get access to whatever now have access to it. But the following year it goes out, because it's not like there's inflation in UBI. What you're trying to do is just make sure you can either lower the cost of these goods and services, like healthcare or whatever, or you can increase wages. And if companies can't do it, now I think there's interesting ways of doing UBI. I think tokenization allows us online to be able to sell our eyeballs, not literally, figuratively. Because why should the lion's share of all of our attention spans go to Google? That's not right. They're making supernormal profits and they're going to get regulated. But people like Brave Browser and stuff are doing interesting things where you could earn whatever digital currency, be it Bitcoin, that you spend time online, you get paid for part of the advertising share. Well, that could pay for part of UBI. There's just a whole new world out there that is going to become accessible. The other thing about these central bank digital currencies is it stops monetary policy and fiscal policy being a blunt tool. Because I can give you a different amount than I give the guy next door to you, because I want to incentivize you because you've got a business, and the guy next door, he works for a large corporation, and I don't think I need to incentivize him as much. I can give you a higher rate of interest because I want to encourage you to be a saver, and I can give me a lower rate of interest or negative interest because I've got more savings. I mean, wow, this is behavioral economics that throws out the rule book of everything. And we can change monetary policy and fiscal policy forever. And I think that's super exciting. It's also a bit of the kind of states over presence, but and they will screw it up, obviously. The law of unintended consequences is not going away. I really like it because it's better than what we've got. And I haven't heard anybody else come up with a better system.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I think about with UBI is the forecast of doom, with all these jobs being lost in transport and kind of
manufacturing.
Yeah, manufacturing. Even like I saw ones with regards to some roles within medicine, the ability to review kind of X-rays and such. There's so many different areas of jobs that could be lost. But what we haven't accounted for is the ingenuity of humans to find new jobs, or will that lead to people finding new jobs in other areas, other kind of service-related jobs, arts jobs? I guess we don't know. But one of the other arguments against UBI is that if you don't have productivity behind the generation of money, that does tend to.
Why are you assuming that people will just stay at home and do nothing? Humans, out of instinct, want to work. They want a purpose.
I think some will. Some won't.
Sorry?
I think some will and some won't. I think it'll be a mixed bag. Not all humans want to work.
Yeah, but then fine. So the people who do work, they have more opportunity. I just think entrepreneurialism is the output here, right? The SaaS business model is so empowering for anybody. You can make 70% margins in pretty much anything you do now. That's why technology is eating the world, because the margin of technology is so high. So anybody can start a business. Look, I mean, you've started a media business with no actual cost.
You want to bet?
And you've got, limited cost.
I know what you mean.
Versus a restaurant, right? Which is bloody capital intensive and has shitty margins. But now it's a whole different world out there. So I think, the micro business and the ability that everybody is now a media person, everybody has an expertise that somebody wants something of. All of this is here. It's all there and it's powerful. But some people just don't have that ability. Some people don't have the education. Some people don't have the knowledge. Some people are too old. Some people are too young. So, I don't mind it. I understand why people don't like it. But I think the system's so screwed now. And if somebody wants to come with a much better idea on fixing this, I'd love to hear it. Because I don't hear a lot of ideas. I hear a lot of criticism. And at least it's something. And I love change.
Yeah.
Because in change, opportunity.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about the bit of the CBDC that I really, really don't like, which is also the argument for Bitcoin. So when I started reading through the thread and then reading through the links you put in, which, by the way, thank you for putting those all in, was this idea that the money being issued by the central bank, but this realization is that you no longer own your money, really. It's not like with Bitcoin where you'll own your private keys. You won't really own your money. This ability to auto tax you, and I'm going to imagine there'll be the ability to auto fine you from your money. That you never have that ability just to like, for example, you can take cash out now, and we're moving away from cash rapidly through COVID. But I have a bit of cash that I always store, which it's on my backup. We can end up just not having that. So you don't really ever control or own your money. You have access to it potentially, but that can be switched off. It can be debased. It can be taken. As you said, behavioral control. It feels really dystopian and scary.
Is it any worse than what we've got?
I think so. Yeah, I think it is worse.
I don't think so.
I think it's marginally worse.
Okay, I mean, I'll buy that. State control, it's inevitable, right? We can complain all day about it, but behavioral economics and big data combined have changed the world. People just don't understand this yet. But this is all Facebook is. This is all Google is understanding human incentives. The power of behavioral economics in manipulating societies for the good or the bad is out of the bottle now. That genie cannot be put back. It's not going away.
Yeah.
Which is why I call it the Bitcoin life raft, because it is one of the few ways you can get out of it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said. It's a good argument for Bitcoin, but that idea that you can't exit at all.
So let's say you weren't a nefarious person, and now you've been given the ability to incentivize, put a tax rate just immediately on goods and services whenever money changes hands, so there's no tax filing system. Imagine that you can give handouts to the right people. Imagine if there's no bad debts because you can claim them. There's some really good things in this.
Oh, I don't deny that.
But the problem is governments are governments and humans are humans, and we're just not good.
Yeah, look, it's kind of utopian. Like I agree with you, there's some real great benefits. Companies screw you over and you win a court judgment, the money can be automatically issued to you rather than having to wait for it to be. Money can't be hidden. I mean, I don't know how kind of like central banks will work with each other and cross jurisdiction, but I understand that. Like they're in a healthy, good society where everyone has good intentions, I can see the benefits. I just, I know what humans are like, and it just feels a little bit like it's another freedom we've given away. That cash.
Okay, and I get that. But let's say you're a bus driver in the UK. Let's say, I don't know how many bus drivers there are in the UK. Let's call it 50,000, 100,000, right? 100,000 bus drivers. We know in the next 5 years, they're all going to be out of a job, or 10 years, call it 10 years. So now me as government, I can look after bus drivers and I can give them direct payments and I can re-educate. That's a huge benefit because I can't do that really easily in the current system. But to get that, I'm going to have to give up any form of anonymity. It's a trade-off. It's the same trade-off we do when we use bloody Twitter or Google or Facebook. It's a trade-off. When you trade off with the government, everyone gets upset. Yet you, who really believes in this stuff, uses Google all day. And they have more data on more people than any single entity on Earth. And they don't use it necessarily for good means.
Well, yeah, we're learning about that now, though. I mean, I don't know if you've seen The Social Dilemma, but there's lots of these kind of like documentaries or concerns about the use of big data. For me personally, it's kind of pushing me away from these companies. So I don't use Google now on my desktop. I've just stopped using it.
I don't. I still use Google Search, but I don't use Google Browser. Yeah. I only have to look for this. But I don't use it because Apple's less nefarious. Because Apple's more of a walled garden and Google's not. I don't use Facebook any longer. I'll go on and check on once a month, but I don't have any app or anything else. But I do use Twitter. Now, Twitter's just particularly incompetent at capturing data. But if they get their shit sorted out, then, the amount of conversations we all have all day on Twitter, I mean, that's there. Our locations, we do, everything.
Have you looked into technically how they're going to implement this? Because that was one of the things I couldn't find. Like, is it a distributed ledger or something?
Decided. So, who was it? Joe Wiesenthal who I blocked on Twitter. But
what? Why? For his Bitcoin trolling?
He was just being a dick. He was just unnecessary. Just unnecessary. So I didn't have time for it. But anyway, he did a good podcast with Tracy Olway and Benoit Cœuré, who was the guy at the ECB who was fronting the digital currency project, now is at the BIS.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great interview because it was really open and honest. He said, well, some countries are going to use it for smart contracts where they can use it for direct payments. Others will just have it like a stable coin. Others will have incentives built in because nobody really knows what they're going to do. He said, I prefer the incentive-based ability to do a bunch of stuff. Others won't. The US hasn't really decided where it's going to go. Others are further down the track. Some of them will change. There are some, with Bitcoin, it's like, it was very clear that it was not anti-Bitcoin, which is everyone's like, see, they're going to ban Bitcoin. It sounds so far away from that. They're moving towards it. They understand that it's there and it's not going to go away, and it probably plays a good role. So that was a really good thing to hear. But basically, it's telling you they don't know. There is no master plan. They're trying to figure it out because it's new technology. And do we use behavioral economics or not? Some voters won't like that. So that's a political decision. And he said all of this is actually a political decision, not a monetary decision. So It depends.
Do you think this is why some of these banks are getting these new licenses, Kraken and Avanti? It's almost in preparation for these CBDCs to come.
I mean, he made it clear that really you don't actually need a banking system because you can have fintech and central bank digital currencies and then anything else in the crypto space or the digital asset space. You actually don't need a bank. So he's like, no, we're very actively encouraging all of the fintech because it's helping us. He says, we're governments. We can't create this stuff, but the private sector can, and we should be using it and encouraging it. So the banks themselves, it's like being an oil company right now. Mm-hmm. You either try and stick to what you do and milk the last dollar out, or you change.
I mean, we're still in financial services, borrowing and lending, or do you think the borrowing and lending will come from the central bank?
Why not? I mean, they just do it through a middleman right now. It's like you can buy your produce from the farm next door, or you can go to the supermarket that stocks the produce from the farm next door and pay the supermarket money. Why?
Well, you want competition, right, for service.
But that's what fintech does. You can choose what digital wallet, what interest rate program you want to use. You can choose any of this stuff. What custody systems, what anything. So what do you need the bank for? Now, that asks the question of who's better at allocating capital, central banks or banks themselves. Well, they both seem pretty shit to me, so I don't really know the answer to that.
Well, perhaps it's companies like BlockFi then, who are essentially a crypto fintech company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The system is moving to them. They're not moving towards the system.
Yeah. That's interesting. It does really, like I said earlier, and we wanted to come back to this, it does really reinforce my conviction on Bitcoin, which is being reinforced almost on a daily basis at the moment. But
yeah, I mean, today the Central Bank of Thailand have talked about their digital currency. I mean, all of this is coming. I mean, you couldn't ask for more flags being planted on a daily basis. I mean, I log onto Twitter every morning and there's like another big story of somebody else who's entered the space or acknowledged the space or moving forward in the space. You're like, okay. I mean, I keep talking about this. I mean, never before has the little guy had the ability to front run the financial institutions and the financial system. That's what we're being given here. It's always been the other way around. Mm-hmm. We all get screwed because they sell into us. They get us to buy into their products and they make all the money. This is the inverse. It's fantastic. It's an inverse pyramid here where we get the power and we're the ones who sell them the Bitcoin at the high price.
Is there an thank you. Thank you. Is there an incentive with the central banks with these new CBDCs themselves to also be owning Bitcoin?
Well, I think game theory would suggest yes. Yeah. Because my guess is if it does well, and people understand of it as a reserve asset, it starts to go into some reserves. That won't be quick, but my guess is within the next year, somebody will do it. Let's say a small country like Jamaica or Bahamas or whoever, right? And everyone go, because what they want is stability. Well, Bahamas is pegged currency, but choose a place that has problems historically with its currency, you get a harder currency. It's like, okay, that's interesting. So then if that helps them with their capital flows, much like we've seen with Michael Saylor's share price, it's the same thing. So if you think, it's backed by a bit of Bitcoin and then it gives them more returns, that works. Because Bitcoin's still not at the money stage. It's still at the appreciation stage where its price discovery is still underway. So, there's a lot of price discovery still to come out of this.
Yeah, it does. So it's one thing that's quite interesting. It does seem to be like the correlation with the S&P seems to be breaking a little bit. I've been very impressed with the price this last 2 weeks. It's kind of interesting. I mean, we did. Well, look at us now. We look back to nearly 13,500. We dipped just below 13,000. It keeps bouncing back. There's so many interesting things that's been happening with you. Have you had Saylor on Real Vision? You must have. Of course you have, actually. Yeah,
we were the second people to have him. We had him for 2 hours.
Did you?
Yeah.
I think I did a double one with him. What did you, when the MicroStrategy thing happened, how did you react? What was like your... Because it wasn't like some company had come out and said, yes, we put $10 million into Bitcoin, which itself would have been amazing. I think everyone would have leapt up. It was 450 million over 2 tranches.
Well, forget the amount of money it is. It was a large part of the cash reserves.
Yeah.
Now, most companies won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael's a true believer. And I don't think Michael is going to drive corporate adoption in the space because he's really speaking the language of Bitcoin and not the language of corporate treasurers. And that has to happen. We're very bad in this space at speaking the language of the others that we actually want to encourage into the system in the end. So, and I've mentioned this numerous times, you're not going to get the pension system and the asset allocation until you start talking in terms of Barra asset allocation models. None of us know what those are because nobody uses them except that industry.
Do you know what it is?
And not really, but it's basic, but it's basically the asset allocation models that the entire pension fund industry uses and the consultants use and the actuaries use and all of this stuff. Well, unless we start talking in those terms, we might as well be shouting in Swahili at them because it makes no sense. And same with the corporate treasury. To talk about the 100-year value of money to the treasurer of Microsoft, who might be in his job for 10 years before he moves on somewhere else, is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Show him the portfolio diversification effects versus cash that he holds across credit, commercial paper, treasuries, different currencies, and say, well, if you put this in, this is what it does to your portfolio. Then he's going to go, yeah, I get it. I'm going to do some of that. We're just still not talking the same language. We're so busy shilling the damn thing that we don't actually help people.
Yeah, it's funny. We shill it because we want it to go up. And then when it goes up, we have this like panic. I don't have enough. It's Michael Saylor today, after admitting he has 17,500 personal Bitcoin, thinking, I get anxiety at night because I don't have enough. I was like, well, I'm fucked.
I saw that and I'm like, I just feel so underweight now. I just feel so pathetic.
Yeah. In terms of this though, because it like I said, has been a really interesting year. It feels like you say, every day you wake up and there's something new. There's something new that seems to be happening. But it really feels like this year will be a year we look back for a number of reasons. I mean, 2020 has just been insane for a number of reasons. What's going on in the US, the election, pandemic, Black Lives Matters, what's going on with Bitcoin. But do you feel like as an industry, because I consider you somebody who kind of came outside and then came into Bitcoin, you already had traditional financial background. Do you feel like the industry is like really maturing now? Yeah.
This was the accelerator. I've said for a long time, right? I've been involved in the Bitcoin space since 2011, and I've always knew where they were going, which is the Bitcoin and macro were going to meet, and this is the year it happened. I mean, there's no surprise, at Real Vision we're starting Real Vision Crypto, which is a whole crypto channel. Well, because macro and crypto, all the crypto people are now having to get up to speed with macro, and you've been doing that. That's what you've been educating. Actually, that, and then there's all the macro guys have to understand crypto. So we're all having to learn at record pace to figure it out, because these are not separate worlds now. They're now the same thing. When we're talking about central bank digital currencies, behavioral economics, we're talking about incentive systems, monetary policy, fiscal policy, how does it affect Bitcoin, right? We're all in the same world now. So and this was the year it happened. It's amazing time.
It's like I'm not sure how to class it, and I guess these times are classed retrospectively. I don't think you consider the Industrial Revolution as it was just starting, right? You know, you look back and say, well, that was the Industrial Revolution, the digital. What is this? Is this the money revolution? Is it the economics revolution? Because it's certainly something.
If software is eating the world, this is software eating money. I mean, it's just that. I mean, the whole financial system. What's been clever here is at the beginning of all of this was basically a bunch of engineers saying, we think we can build a better system of money. Yeah. What a ridiculously arrogant thing to set out to do. But they did.
Yeah.
I mean, staggering. And we haven't even started this journey. I mean, we can postulate all day what's coming. We have no real idea. And that's what's so fascinating about it. We have no idea where this is all going to go. And and I know it's not really your focus, but stuff like tokens are going to change everything.
Yeah, I mean, I covered the INX one. I'm not really interested in a lot of cryptocurrencies or altcoins. I did cover the INX one because I was like, and I might get shouted at by maximalists for thinking this, but the idea of I have a wallet, say my ledger, and the idea that on my ledger I can have my Bitcoin, and also I could have my digital pounds, and also next to that I could maybe have my shares, and that I could say, and I could be having this conversation with you, Raoul, and Raoul, you're like, sure, what, Pete, I want to buy 10% of what Bitcoin did for Real Vision, and it's whatever 50 Bitcoin, and I say yes, and we can just do that transfer. That the idea of owning those assets and that legally be enforceable, I think it's great. I don't know how it works, but if that is legally enforceable and it works, I actually like that idea.
Yeah, it's super empowering. So somebody came to me here in the Cayman Islands and said, because Cayman's looking very seriously at this whole digital space, because all the legal infrastructure for globally came out of here, really, because all the lawyers are here, because it's mainly offshore. And somebody came to me and said, I want to tokenize the real estate, start tokenizing real estate. And he's a real estate guy, but he also actually is involved in the gold storage business and the crypto industry and all sorts of stuff. And he's like, well, people, Caymanians, right? We've got the same problem, rich and poor divide. Mm-hmm. It's a relatively wealthy island, but there's still a rich poor divide. And the idea is they can't afford real estate on 7 Mile Beach, prime real estate. Hell, I can't afford real estate on 7 Mile Beach. But if you tokenize it, then all of the Caymanians can participate in all of the property market, and it can go in the pension system. Okay, so then it's not like, well, you can't buy the bottle of Chateau Lafite that's $10,000 at auction. You can, because you tokenize it. So everybody, it's so democratizing that it's incredibly powerful. And we talked about a world where everybody becomes a media person, where everybody has these small businesses. Well, to tokenize your cash flows, to tokenize you, we're going to see it with sports stars. We'll see it with, everybody's talking about this already. Music is clearly, there's no middlemen. They're all going to get taken out. Why Taylor Swift, with this enormous army of followers, should ever need a middleman? She shouldn't. Not when you can tokenize everything.
Yeah. Well, there are these other implications for things as well, things I've noticed happen at the same time. So I started work on this series about Donald Trump about 3 months ago, and it's completely changed on its head. It was originally going to be like a story about how he's a potential dictator. I spent months researching it, all his nefarious actions and lies. And what I ended up realizing, it's not actually a story about Donald Trump. This is a story about the massive change in society right now. Because on so many levels this is happening. It might just be money, but we've all become much closer to politics than we were 20 years ago because we have apps. We have 24-hour news, we have social media. So politics is in our face, so we all feel closer to it. But politics hasn't grown up to isn't matured in a way to cope with everyone having a political opinion. And one of the negative effects of that is that we now have real distrust in the news. So you talk about people being their own media companies. That we also have this situation where people are becoming, like you say, they become their own media company on Twitter. But I'm becoming really distrustful in that. So we've got this kind of like revolution in money, revolution in news, revolution in media. But I'm not sure if it's all going in the right direction for me, Raoul, because
no, but I think everybody acknowledges that, and that's a good start. So, for example, at Real Vision, we built our own community. It's called the Exchange, and you can go in there and interact with Real Vision subscribers. So, what you're doing there essentially is curating who you want to interact with. Right? Twitter is everybody, but once you're on a platform that has the details of who you are really, and you can't just you can use a fake name on Real Vision, but we bill your credit card, so we know who the hell you are. So what it does is create a different kind of behavioral interaction. And I think communities themselves begin to self-police. If you set it up as, listen, if somebody's posting something that is fictitious, nefarious, or something else, then again, just using a token system, a credit system, you can have people leave the community or get promoted within the community for the right actions. That's not driven by us as a centralized, but actually driven by the community.
I think what I was heading towards saying, so everything is moving a lot more towards smaller units, individuals, smaller companies. Yes, you're still going to need huge companies. Like if the airlines ever start flying again, I don't think I'm going to trust no offense, Raoul Pal Airways. I'm still going to want to use British Airways, right? But in terms of media, I think the structure doesn't work for massive media companies. So I think structurally we're moving towards this kind of self-sovereign individual, smaller units of everything. I'm not ready for it myself.
Well, it's hard, and people get more isolated from everybody. It's not easy,
No.
And I think it does go to smaller units, and it goes towards communities.
Yeah,
it used to be a broadcast world, and it's now becoming a community world where not only do you create content, but the community creates content, and kind of everybody's in charge of the whole thing. I love that, but it's very fragmented, as opposed to because everyone's had enough of the big platforms. So we're now going to do the opposite, because we're humans. We always do this. Oh my God, we don't want that. We'll go to that, and then oh my God, we don't want that. We'll go to the other way. But that's where we're going. And we're moving away, so we're going to go to communities where we don't have to hear from everybody else.
Well, fragmented is the word I should have used, because everything is fragmenting. But the thing that's been in my head with this story I've been writing is that, or like script writing, is that I think politics now needs to fragment. This idea of this centralized focus on centralized government it's really ineffective.
Well, look, here's a question for you: is what's wrong? And I don't know the answer to this. I don't really have a view. But the two-party system it's failed the UK. It's failed the US. Mm-hmm. The Europeans generally have proportional representation. Mm-hmm. Is that better? Probably,
yeah. I think it's more.
It's less extreme.
I think it's more wanting to take a bigger issue in interest in localized politics anyway. But that's where I've been heading. It's like if the digital revolution empowers everyone, if this monetary revolution makes us all self-sovereign, it's outside of this CBDC issue. Why do we need to rely on these big government?
But the question is do you even need to interact with them? Because I'm not sure that what we understand as society, country stuff, is going to be defined by anything apart from the services that the state provides. Be it defense, be it healthcare, be it whatever it is, right? Having your rubbish collected. But we actually live online in a different community. So my online community is Twitter. That's where I hang out. That is where the social pressure, if you create the wrong behavior, the social reward system lies there. It doesn't lie within the state. So living online, we just go and hang out in the tribes and the places and the communities that we want to. We live in different societies. And then you end up with a weird world where if you think it's okay to be a paedophile, you can hang out in paedophile online groups, and your societal norms are that. But God forbid if you beat dogs, because then you're one of the awful people. And the dog beating society, they think that's great, and then it's weird. So you're going to fracture societal norms because what's norm in some places not normal in the other.
Yeah, I think that where I was going with this, I was thinking like, are we railroading ourselves into anarchism without even realizing it? Like we're becoming self-sovereign in terms of money, especially with something like Bitcoin. We're becoming like kind of we can operate and create businesses at a whim online. We can, in some ways, Raoul, we can do business with each other outside of the government knowing what we're doing. Are we actually pushing ourselves to a point where we don't need government?
Well, the ultra fragmentation where everybody has a different set of rules. As I said, the paedophile online groups have different set of rules than our Twitter group or the Bitcoin maximalist group or whoever it may be, right? The Chihuahua lovers group. Therefore, there is no rules.
Yeah.
There is no cohesion to society because you're living in micro societies. So it's like going back to the Dark Ages where everybody fights.
Oh no, I don't want that.
Because you don't have societal cohesion. Yeah. Well, something has to change to create cohesion because actually all the incentives are for fragmentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you're doing it, I'm doing it, right? So we've fragmented media into financial media and then Bitcoin media, right? With fragment. When it used to be, when I first grew up, I'd listened to the BBC.
Yeah.
Okay, centralized, down to fragmentation. And I think you're right. It feels really empowering in the beginning, and then you realize there is no society, or your society is so narrow that you seek large society again. We probably do this endlessly.
Yeah. Countries
are going smaller as well, right? We've been ever since World War II, really, since the end of the British Empire, country blocks have been shrinking. So it was the British Empire, then it was the Russians that went. Europe was the anomaly.
Mm-hmm. Well, we still had it. We still had it in like Yugoslavia.
Yeah, but fragmentation. I mean, the Scots are going to leave England at some point.
Okay.
The Catalonians are going to end up leaving Spain. The Basques will end up leaving Spain and France. The Southern Germans, the Northern Italians. That's the natural, from what you're describing, is the natural path. Now, that's not terrible. It's just very different. But we all know that when you have lots of microstates, you tend to have less peace. And I think we can see it online. Like the Bitcoin maximalists just will not stop trolling everybody. And that's great because they support Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Creates a vibrant society. It's good. But their societal norms are different to mine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with them on a lot of Bitcoin stuff, but then there's some of the things I don't agree with them on. But we've really gone down a rabbit hole I wasn't prepared for. Now you give me a whole bunch of other things to think about. Well, listen, look, I know you're busy, so I'm going to let you off the line now, but it's good to see you. I might look into my Cayman 1 year stay thing, see if my kids want to come out of school for a year. I can't see it happening. But tell people how to find out more about Real Vision, Raoul.
Yeah, I mean, look, the easiest thing, because people listen to podcast watching video, go to our YouTube channel first, Real Vision, or go to the podcast. Just check those out, the usual places. You'll see what we do. And as I said, we're about to make the biggest media launch in the crypto business. So we've been testing internally our Real Vision Crypto. It'll become, and you'll be on it without question, and it'll become the meeting place for all of us. We have a community we're building from that, and we want to bring as many people together as possible. That will be free, which is a big change for us, and that's going to be brought by dealing with a partner consortium to bring that free. So Real Vision Crypto, I think, launches around the 18th of November.
Wow, it's very soon.
Yeah.
Let the election get out of the way.
Yeah, always, right? Just want to give birth to the damn thing and get going.
Yeah, well, listen, look. By the way, thanks for that bottle of cognac. Was it cognac? Yeah.
No, it was rum.
Oh, no, rum. Sorry, bottle of rum. Sorry, yeah. I stopped drinking halfway through, but that's what. Do you know why that bottle's so good? It's one of the few spirits I can have without a mixer.
Yes, that's right.
It tastes so good. I got through about half of it, then I gave up drinking.
Why have you given up drinking?
I just stopped for a week, and then it's become nearly 3 months. I'll go back at some point, probably. But
Yeah, I stopped for 3 weeks. I was going to do a month, but I didn't.
well, I was going to go till my birthday. And my birthday is Saturday on Halloween, so I might. This will disappoint some people. I might have a glass of champagne on Saturday. But thank you for that, by the way. That rum is amazing. I'm not
Yeah,
like
it's really incredible.
yeah,
Really incredible rum.
I'm not like a rum drinker traditionally, but I had some in
Well, rum
Barbados
is
once.
because we all grew up with Bacardi and crap like the Captain Morgans and all that rubbish. Woods Navy Reserve.
Yeah,
Good rum. You're like, oh my god,
yeah,
this is like delicious.
yeah, yeah. I got through that first half in days.
Good on
Well,
you.
listen, Raoul, look, good to see you, man. Good luck with the launch of the new channel, and take care. I'm sure we'll stay in touch. I'll be pestering you in a few months
Yeah,
to come on again.
absolutely. Yeah, take care, my friend.
Take care.
Good to see you.
Bye.